Hey guys, so I've been reading a couple of just really random links lately, and one interesting, actually, article that I came across was talking about gurus, or gurus? I don't know, gurus. It's a strange word, and basically what kind of gurus there are, and whether or not they're good for you. I forgot the name of the website, but it's a pretty popular link when you look up Ken Wilber critics and stuff like that. It's basically talking about, what makes a good teacher and what doesn't, and, you know, the human side of every kind of teacher that's out there. And then he goes over a couple of different teachers, including Ramana Maharshi and Ken Wilber, Andrew Cohen, etc., etc. And I thought it was interesting that a particular kind of description came up for a guru called being in the intermediate zone. And apparently this was uh, discussed by Sri Aurobindo. Aurobindo? I don't know how to pronounce his name. But he talked about this, and what it basically means is an intermediate zone of spiritual development where you catch a glimpse of the divine essence of the primordial isness, but it's sort of like streamed down into our state of consciousness, so it gets kind of jarbled. It's not completely clear, and it's a dangerous path because the way you experience it is convincing. You're amazed. It's a breakthrough, so of course you feel like you've reached some great plateau, and a lot of teachers are kind of navigating this realm, and a lot of it's very convincing for them. It's almost sort of like what Wilbur talks about, one taste. Um, just getting one little glimpse of one taste, and then kind of proclaiming yourself as a teacher just because you think you've reached something, but really it's all just begun. I mean, enlightenment isn't just an end point, it's a process, it's an evolution in and of itself. So, this intermediate zone, at least Aurobindo is talking about it being a dangerous area where teachers can become hindrances to their students because they're not perfect, and they have, at least in what he was Aurobindo was talking about, there's a lot of pitfalls. It's a very organic, messy evolution process. Just because you have a Satori experience doesn't mean that you're suddenly ready to be a master. It doesn't. The experience itself of, oh, I have Satori. Oh, wow, the awakened mind. Radical bliss. This is amazing. Just because you have that doesn't mean you suddenly can teach people. I mean, you have to realize this is a strict process as well. So he kind of portrayed this intermediate zone as a dangerous and easily misleading area of development, and I think any kind of process really can be like that. I think processes before so-called enlightenment can be dangerous because the whole thing is a learning process, and we have to go through mistakes, and we have to go through our own understanding of it, and we can get stuck. And I think this is true to every person at any kind of stage, or whatever you'd like to call it. So it's an enlightenment experience, and thereafter, to me, is not surprising. I mean, this whole thing is like evolution. Evolution is a very messy process. There's lots of pitfalls. It makes sense that there'd be an evolution of spirituality too, as much as there is an organic biological evolution, a psychological evolution. It's all a very similar process. And at least Aurobindo mentioned that the only process that's different is that ultimate isness, that awakened mind. And that just simply is. So you can't really compare it. But at any rate, so yeah, spiritual development. And it kind of made me appreciate Zen a lot more, because I know, at least in 3 Pillars of Zen, in the book that very good book, by the way. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. 3 Pillars of Zen. A lot of the teachers are kind of prepared for this intermediate zone to begin happening with their students, and they basically tell them to steer clear. steer clear of any kind of, oh, I feel that this is right, oh, I feel that that is right, I feel any kind of compulsion to do one thing or another. Just avoid those things and focus on just being. Come back to the breath. Oh, you're seeing visions of some kind of deities. So be it. That's okay. How is your breathing exercise? Are you still following your breath? Are you still minding what is? Are you still no minding? That sort of remaining focused on your development is a very powerful tool in a very messy sort of challenging spiritual environment and territory that one can easily fall into a danger if they do not remain very focused on their particular development in this sort of isness. Don't forget to just be, and don't get lost in all the new things that are happening, even if they're blissful and they're beautiful and they're illuminating. Don't get lost in them either. Just realize that that's all part of just being too. And that's sort of what the Zen master tells their students when they experience these sort of things. So I really appreciated that. And I just thought I'd share that with you, the intermediate zone. Aurobindo kind of presented it in a very kind of dismal way. He's like, haha, that you'll experience this and this and this, and they'll also have to go through all that and that and that and that. And these silly gurus, they often get confused and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was more of a criticism of gurus thinking they know what they know, but they don't because they're in this intermediary zone. But he also had some positive sides. There are a lot of positive aspects to it. So I think it's sort of just part of any kind of growth process. And because of that, I don't necessarily, if I was going to write about it, if I knew more about it, I wouldn't write about it so negatively. Or perhaps he did it so people would be careful, and that makes sense. But at any rate, the author of this website is talking about particular spiritual teachers. He speaks of Wilbur both with high praise and high criticism, but in particular he speaks of Andrew Cohen with a lot of criticism. And I can kind of see where he's coming from. A lot of his analysis of Andrew Cohen sort of being stuck in an intermediary zone in his own kind of issues. At least from the vibes that I've picked up from him as a human being, he seems to have a lot of good goals, but it seems like he's kind of snagged on a few psychological issues. I don't know. I mean, you can just like look at somebody sometimes and pick up on what their state of being and their state of mind, and given we all have issues, but I don't know. I just always, I'm never comfortable, and this could just be Krishnamurti rubbing off on me, but I'm never really comfortable when somebody likes to call themselves guru or teacher. I mean, his descriptions of him and Wilbur talking are often called the guru and the pandit, and that's what he calls himself. If you're going to call yourself a guru, you have to back that up with some pretty profound stuff. And I personally haven't found too much in the way of profound teaching with him. I don't know, maybe other people have. He's kind of like a guru light, you know what I mean? Like the diet, sugar-free version of spiritual teaching. It just seems very processed, very restricted, and I don't know, a little idealistic. And this all may be harsh and kind of vague, but these are just my first impressions with him. I've seen the magazine, What is Enlightenment? It's pretty good. I guess it's kind of like a more watered down version of Wilbur's philosophy. And there have been some good articles, but yeah, I guess the pitfalls you gotta watch out for is getting snagged in one kind of language or another kind of language, especially when you're talking about spiritual development, because you can lose somebody in an instant and not be able to communicate what you really want to teach because of the barriers of your own language. I think we have to keep in mind what Ramana Maharshi said. His greatest teaching wasn't talking, it was just his presence of being. So yeah, simply be, and thanks for listening.